Good evening, everyone. Is everyone comfortable? No? Okay, good. I don't know about you, but I feel cheated. When I was 10 and I saw Blade Runner for the first time and I saw flying cars, and oh my God, the future looks awesome. All the androids and everything and the dilemmas. And as we all know, Blade Runner was started on November 19th, 2019. We're 2 days after that date, and there's no flying cars, no androids, none, at least none that we know of, no Harrison Ford being all sexy and everything. Anyway, but artificial intelligence and coexistence with it is the issue we are dealing with today. So welcome, everyone. My name is Aljaž Pengobitens. I'll be moderating today's event, but hopefully I'll be on the sidelines because all the guests today are awesome. You guys are awesome as well. Most of you made it, well, if not just now, but you were also, some of you were present with the events that happened before this one. So thanks for being here. And thank you for being on the international event, which brings together reputable speakers, scientists, and interested audience in respect algorithms, artificial intelligence, cybernetics, cognitive systems, and cybersecurity, with the aim of identifying the main challenges and potential solutions to these challenges in order to bring the most benefit to liberal policymakers, EU economy, consumers, and the society in general. I really had to get this part right. With that said, a few administrative things. Most of you have been issued this questionnaire. The organizers, ELF and Novum Institute and Zavod 14, will be most happy if you return them en masse, because that's what they love to do after events like this: crunch numbers, make polls and reports and everything. So it's what they're here for. What I'm here for is to make this as short as possible, and unfortunately I have to excuse, or rather have to tell you that Minister for Economic Development Technology, Zdravko Počivalšek, will unfortunately not be joining us because matters of the state, well, matter. Matter not to our remaining two keynote speakers are just as interesting, if not more. So it's my great honor to invite Alexander Aristonik, Director of Zavod 14, Zavod 14. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear distinguished guests, dear participants, dear partners, dear liberal friends. On behalf of Zavod 14, it's indeed my great honor and privilege to welcome you all to our international event, actually final international event at this venue, Polygon. And we are honestly delighted to have you here at today's event, organized in cooperation with European Liberal Forum and our distinguished partners, Friedrich Neumann Foundation, International Educational Center, and Novum Institute. Zavod 14, as a non-profit civil society organization, aims to promote social liberal ideas, and today's event is focused on artificial intelligence, which is a very topical issue, as AI is already part of our lives. From using a virtual personal assistant to organize our working day, to traveling in self-driving vehicles, or using our phones suggesting songs or restaurants that we like, AI is already a reality. AI is also helping us to solve some of the world's biggest challenges, from treating chronic disease, reducing fatality rates, and also fighting climate changes. Like the steam engine or electricity in the past, or even internet, AI is transforming our world, our society, and our industry. Growth in the computing power availability of data and progress in algorithms have turned AI into one of the most strategic technologies of the 21st century. The stakes could not be higher. The way we approach AI will define the world we live in. However, a solid European framework is needed in this area. At the moment, EU is lagging behind, particularly US, China, and other global competitors. The EU should be ahead of technological development in the AI and ensure they are swiftly taking up across its economy. Joint effort by both public and private sector are needed to gradually increase overall investment by 2020 and beyond, in line with the EU's economic weight and investment on other continents. Public and private research and development investment in AI in the EU last year were estimated around 5 billion. The EU as a whole should aim to increase this investment to nearly or even over 20 billion per year over the following decade. The impact of artificial intelligence on human rights, democracy, the rule of law is one of the most crucial factors that we will define in the period in which we live, and probably the whole century. Political, societal, financial, and regulatory issues are becoming even more important. However, AI can also pose dangers in current form. For instance, social manipulations and invasion of privacy and social grading. For instance, now it's possible to track and analyze an individual's every move online, as well as they are going their daily businesses. Cameras are nearly everywhere nowadays. Sorry. So, cameras are nearly everywhere nowadays, and facial recognition algorithms know who you are. In fact, this is the type of information that is going to power, for instance, China's social credit system, that is expected to give every one of its 1.4 billion citizens a personal score based on how they behave. Is this the right way? So I hope we will answer on these issues today at our event. We must also ensure that AI is developed and applied in appropriate legal framework, in line with our European values and our fundamental rights and ethical principles. In fact, this is paramount matter. Ethically based laws governing AI are extremely important to help foster public trust and acceptance. Therefore, European Commission President-elect Ursula von der Leyen has already promised to purpose legislation to address the human and ethical implications for AI in her first 100 days in office. Ladies and gentlemen, let me slowly finish with the very famous quote of great mathematician and cryptographer Alan Turing, which has been a key guiding principle for the data scientists and business leaders interested in AI. He said in 1951, at some stage, we should have to expect that the machines to take control. And obviously, we are not very far away. We are proud, on behalf of Zavod 14, that we host today this very important international event, which brings together reputable speakers, scientists, and audience interested in these important aspects of algorithms, AI, cybernetics, cognitive systems, and so on. Today, we already had an event. We had 2 workshops, and I'm convinced that the results of this workshop, which will be presented later on the stage, will give us a very important and very good starting point for discussion at the round table. At this event, you're kindly, or after this event, you are kindly invited to our special and unique event, dance performance titled Still Stand Digitalized, which will show us the society through a modern dance performance with social and ethical implications of digitalization and also AI. On behalf of Zavod 14 and our partners, we wish you an interesting and fruitful discussion and hope to see you again next year at our events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander, for making my job all that much easier. Now you know everything that's going to happen this evening. Our next speaker, our next guest is Goran Neralic, member of the board of directors of a European Liberal Forum. Please. Sorry. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I would also like to thank Alexander for the great introduction, because this only leads me to say welcome to the ELF event. Also, thank you to Alexander and Zavod 14 for inviting me to open this event as a board member. If you don't know, but if you know, but it's always good to repeat. ELF is a political network of 40 organizations, NGOs, think tanks. We work as a think tank of the ALDE party, and we work on what we now call academy and ideas, which is basically a fancy way of saying that we work on capacity building, trainings, and also on policy development. And it's always a pleasure to be here at Zavod 14 events, because they always deal with cutting-edge topics, such as AI. So I'm very much look forward to the discussions at the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Goran. With that said, it's time for the presentations of conclusions of the workshop. Coexist with AI, Vision of the Society 5.0, or How to Regulate Algorithms. Your presenter will be Aljaž Košmerl.
Good evening. So, yes, it is my honor to present the rounded up conclusions of the 2 workshops we've had today. And just to give a short overview, we've had a very varied audience with people coming from social sciences, law, government, computer science. So it was a very rounded discussion, which we started with a short overview of what AI is and is not, guided by me. And then in the second part moved towards the ethical and legal considerations led by Professor Dr. Musak. And so it was a broad discussion, which is not easy to distill, but I will do my best. What we started with was we identified the key difference between the narrower and shallower approaches of artificial intelligence as is used today, which, though they may do so with superhuman efficiency, are optimized for single narrow tasks, which is very different from the broader and deeper intelligence systems commonly presented in works such as Blade Runner. We sort of recognized this important difference as we recognized the inherent pitfalls of both, with one being a lot more pressing today, and the other in a more philosophical way, the other in a more philosophical way and in the longer run. Along with this, we recognize the different roles of artificial intelligence, in a sense that not everything within AI is just an autonomous system. Not all of these systems are agents or actors who perform these actions. Some of these are just tools to inspect data and inform our decisions, and both of these then have, again, their own considerations to take into account. After recognizing all these, we moved our discussion towards the regulation issue, so how to regulate these more autonomous systems. An example of these would be the self-driving car that we are these have begun emerging in our roads, and several issues were considered here. One aspect of this was that, in a way, this is an engineering problem, which has, in nature, a lot in common with industries such as pharmacology, where the common public is also not intrinsically aware of the mechanisms where these drugs, of how these drugs work, and are reliant on organizations to inspect and certify these and their safety for society. What was pointed out here was that it's important to inspect the entire data value chain, because a lot of systems in artificial intelligence are built from data sets collected in the world, and these data sets, of course, are core to the functionality later. So it is not enough to just inspect the functionality of the algorithms that work, but we need to inspect the entire chain up to its very beginning with the data collection and so on. Yes, with the algorithmic side of this process, it was highlighted that there is an important need for transparency, both in the sense of that there's a need to understand what kind of algorithms and what technologies are used, either in government or in big companies or whatnot, because of course this is the only way for us to know how they affect us. But an important, but the key idea to which we I believe arrived jointly, is that when designing systems such as a self-driving car, there is a key lack of a standards or procedures on how to take ethical and moral standards into account at development time, because this is the key difference here to some in comparison to, let's say, what we might call traditional engineering, because these systems in the end are supposed to make decisions on their own. That is, they are the ones that in that nick of time choose an action. It is up to the engineers developing these systems to encode and enshrine into these systems a logic that guides their actions, but this needs to happen at development time, and there was a strong opinion that there is a lack of standards for achieving that in modern industry. Because, and this is the ending thought of my speech, because in the end, what it all comes down to is the ethical principles of the society we decide to live in. This is a complicated and what I like to think an emergent property of the society, because these rules are not typically something that any society builds by sitting down on any specific Thursday and just writing down. This is something that comes out through many generations in a longer process, and this is also important, non-universal in the global sense, because from a society to society these principles may differ a lot. But these are the only and the end base for any such decision making, which can then only be distilled through the engineering process into these systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aljaž, for all the work that you've done already at this event. Because the future is not always what they said it will be, there's been a slight change in plans compared to what you've been handed out at the beginning of the event. The future is better. We have one extra presentation for you, which will be presented by Professor Ivan Bratko. And while we set up the whole thing, I'll kindly invite Professor Bratko on stage. And let's set everything up. Perhaps before we, while this is being set up, just give us a few talking points that you'll be covering.
Okay, good evening. I would actually prefer to talk while my presentation is on.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is my title. You can see the presentation is in English, sort of, but initially I was told that the presentations will be in Slovene. So this is my very quick translation into English, assuming that it will be given in Slovene. You can expect some typos. I apologize about those typos. All right. Do we have a pointer? Or there's a pointer. Anyway, this is my. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. It's working. Thanks. So this is my title, Explanation in Artificial Intelligence, especially why is it so important. Now, to explain this, I will need to introduce the concept of boxes. Some of them are called black boxes, and some of them are called transparent boxes. Okay, black boxes and transparent boxes. And I'm sure that many of you already know these concepts. But nevertheless, I would like to make it sure that we know what I have in mind. Okay, so this would be a black box. You can see it is completely black. And there's data coming into this box. This is a typo. And there are some results coming out of this box. And because the box is completely black, the user cannot see what is happening inside the box. So the user can't see how the system got from data to results. So there's no logic available to the user to see how the results were obtained. And I can tell you immediately that this is kind of boxes that we don't like in AI. Sometimes they can be tolerated, but in general we don't like them. The other kind of box is transparent box. And in that case, such a box can explain the reasoning trace of the reasoning behind getting from data to results. And I presented that by making this a white box, and also you can see there's a sequence of steps, which you can imagine these are reasoning steps that the system made when deriving the result. And importantly, the user can see these reasoning steps and understand how the system got to the result. And the result can be a decision, an important decision that the system is recommending to us. For example, a treatment, suppose this is a medical system, it would, the system has computed a recommendation about the treatment, and we can be pretty nervous about, to make sure that that is correct. So let me explain why explanation in AI is so important. Apologies about some more typos. but it is essentially important for trustworthy AI. Now, trustworthy AI is something that is declared as one of the goals of applied artificial intelligence in Europe. And I think somebody already mentioned today this quote that Ursula von der Leyen said, "In my first 100 days, I will put forward legislation for European approach to human and ethical implications of AI." And this legislation surely will have to, or this approach will have to include explanation in artificial intelligence. So, why do we care about these explanations? But sometimes we actually don't care so much. That's not so much important. For example, if you consider a weather prediction system that can make mistakes, for example, every 2% of the forecasts are incorrect, we don't care. That's not so tragic. We don't care, and we don't have to know exactly how the system worked out this such a forecast. But medical diagnosis is another story, and also the treatment decisions is also completely different. Now you can imagine that the system possibly made a mistake, and if it is a recommendation for our treatment, that will be rather important, and we would like to understand what are the reasons for the system recommending this particular treatment, and also what are the reasons for the system believing that I'm suffering from this particular diagnosis. In medical practice, in such cases, we seek the second opinion, so to make sure that the diagnosis and the advice are correct. And we would like to understand and be able to argue about that. Now, another type of explanation, type of application when explanation is really needed is automated decisions in justice, employment, like, for example, decisions about employing a certain person, financial services, like approval of bank credits, insurance, and in all these cases, now automated applications based on AI, they give impression of being biased. So some people are happy with those decisions, and they believe that, okay, I was refused because I'm a woman, or well, I didn't get probation relief because I'm black, and so on. Later, maybe we can talk about that a little bit as well. Now, another kind of application, big area of application of machine learning, which is one of the approaches of AI, is in science. Most of the sciences are now progressing by using artificial intelligence methods, and these methods actually discover new theories. And you can imagine if these theories produced by machine learning were black boxes, they wouldn't be of much use for humans, because if a human puts forward a new theory, you want to make sure that everybody understands them, everybody who knows about the field can talk about it and discuss it and criticize it. Another area of applications is human-machine collaboration. Suppose that I am working with a robot. We are both working on a common task, and to be able to do that all right, I need to know what the robot that I'm collaborating with intends to do. So this robot needs to understand what I'm doing, and I want to understand what the robot is doing, and sometimes the robot will need to explain this to me. There's another reason for explanation, which is in debugging AI systems. Suppose that the system made an obvious mistake, and we need to know what went wrong. If we cannot see how the system got to the solution, there's no way of figuring out what is wrong and how to debug it. And I'm going to illustrate this point with examples from deep learning a bit later. So the problem is black boxes, and I'm going to be a little more technical now. AI can be the whole field of AI can be viewed as comprised of a number of methods that we use. And those methods can be divided in two groups. One is symbolic AI, which is, for example, which includes logical reasoning, and that enables explanation because the user can simply follow a sequence of reasoning steps, and then that will make sense to the user. It's not all that easy because sometimes the number of these reasoning steps is very large, like 1,000 or 1,000,000. In that case, something more clever has to be done. But then there are sub-symbolic approaches or methods of artificial intelligence, these include neural networks. And here explanation is, we are very far from having any means of producing suitable explanation for humans. So many AI methods do not enable explanation of their decisions naturally. There is something which is called explainable AI, abbreviated as XAI, which became a fashionable area in AI right now, or maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Before that, it did not exist under this name. It did exist, has existed for a long time, but then to become fashionable, each new technique or each new approach needs a new term. So this is now the new term which made it fashionable. And it is all about how to generate explanation for humans, of course. Can you give me a show how many people have heard the term explainable AI? Just raise your hands. Yes, you have, yes. Okay, maybe 10%. But now the problem of producing automatically a good explanation is very hard. So the progress is very, very slow. We are not anywhere close to sufficient methods yet. Okay. Now I'm not sure how long I can talk, but okay, I'm going to talk until nobody interrupts me. I have a few more minutes to 5 minutes. Okay, all right. Who said that? Okay, thanks. So, progress in artificial intelligence recently. I'm going to illustrate one aspect of the state of the art, which is not very happy. Among AI methods, machine learning is the one that made the fastest progress in the last 30 years. But now the most successful machine learning methods occasionally produce incomprehensible results. So something that nobody can understand. And a bit later I'm going to show you some examples, which will be fun, but if you think, then they are pretty serious. Now, deep learning is an approach to machine learning based on artificial neural networks, and this is the one that this approach has produced most spectacular results in 2010s. So recently, in the last decade. This is an illustration of a simple neural network. Let me repeat the question again. How many of you have seen this figure? Okay, 50%. Or a bit more. Okay, this is called a simple neural network. Let me just say what would be the implication of that. Here, this is called the input level. And here, suppose that this network is used for image recognition. This would be the pixels of the of the image that is to be recognized. Okay, so this is the input image. This is the outputs which tell what is in the picture. For example, this is a cat or a tomato. And inside, this is a so-called hidden layer where something is being computed. Now this is simple because it has only one hidden layer. And this is called deep neural network. It's deep because it has many, several hidden layers. And a neural network, deep neural networks can have maybe 100 or more hidden layers. Okay, so it gets a little more complicated. And why am I talking about this right now? Because if we have more layers, then the things become less and less comprehensible. So it's very hard to understand. Now, about the progress in using deep learning, this particular figure comes from ImageNet dataset challenge, when deep learning was used for learning from a large set of images, several million of images, maybe, probably 11 million. And this is what the progress looked like. So it started at 2010, and the error was about 25%. So in 25% of the cases, a neural network, after learning, made a mistake in classifying the next image. But then, year after year, this error rate was going down. So the neural networks with progress were becoming more and more accurate. Okay, in the end, what was the percentage here? At 2016, it went down to about 2%. Okay, this is in terms of accuracy. So large progress in terms of accuracy, but now the blue bars show what was the number of hidden layers in the network. Now you can see it started rather innocently with a few initially, and then it came to over 100, like I think something like 150. Now you can imagine that this is becoming really messy, very, very hard to understand. So yes, we do have very good accuracy, but the transparency is getting worse and worse. Okay, I'm going to summarize this. Poor comprehensibility. Now the result of these many layers is very poor comprehensibility, and that is the main drawback of deep learning, especially in terms of the discussion that I'm talking about right now. Now, the limitations of deep learning is, incomprehensibility. So there are typical black boxes. There are some attempts at making them transparent boxes, or producing explanation, but those attempts have very, very modest success. This is unacceptable in many applications. On top of that, these neural networks lack logical reasoning, so they are not capable of logical reasoning or common inference, and the result is they don't have any idea of common sense. So things that are very easy for humans, like that we all understand as common sense, these networks are very bad at. Experiments show show excellent prediction accuracy results, but occasionally these networks make unexplainable mistakes. So I'm going to show you a few mistakes now, the question to be remembered, why this is not really very good, is that if we ask the question, is it possible for neural networks to guarantee correctness? Do you have any correctness guarantees? Well, we cannot. So that again now is very bad, and if we don't understand what is the reason for failure, that makes it worse. Now I'm going to show a few famous examples from the literature when a neural network was fooled and made a mysterious and unbelievable mistake. So in this particular case, deep neural network was successfully learning to recognize images of panda. Okay, that's panda. And now, then after learning, this image was shown to the network. Now, what would you say is on this image? Okay, very good. Okay, excellent. So at least two people have said panda. Right. Now, this image is not exactly the same as this one, but to human eye, this is still 100% panda. Now, this neural network says this is gibbon with 99% probability. And gibbon is a kind of monkey which looks like this. So a human would never mistake this for a gibbon. I can see that. Yeah, the projection is not so good. It's much better here, but anyway, you can see that there's a big difference between these two. Okay, how did this happen? There's some mathematical explanation which I will not be able to go into at this point. But I want to show you some other examples which further illustrate the point and the problem. In this case, the neural network was trying to learn to recognize school buses. And it says, okay, this is a school bus. But for this one, it says this is not a school bus. I mean, what would you say? If this is a school bus, then probably this one should also be a school bus. Again, very hard to explain why this happened. But it goes on. Like, for example, we said this is a school bus. This one neural network believes is not a school bus. But then the neural network surprisingly believes that this one is also a school bus. To a human, this is just noise. I mean, makes no sense. To a human, okay, this may be, with a little imagination, this may be a very abstract school bus because it inherited some right colors from here. But okay, this one doesn't have wheels, doesn't have windows, so you can see that the neural network, although doing so well on average, has no idea about correct and conceptual definition of what a school bus is. I mean, it should at least have learned that it has some wheels and so on. Okay, now another famous example, which is I think a little more recent, is that now this is can be a rather bad mistake. You can imagine a neural network learns about traffic signs and learns that this is a stop sign, and then it is shown this one. Now here you should be careful that there are some changes with respect to that. There are some, you can imagine the children are playing with it, and they put some stickers on this stop sign. But now the neural network believes that this is a sign saying speed limit is 45 miles per hour. So now autonomous vehicle using this neural network is supposed to stop in front of the sign, but it will possibly even speed up because the speed limit is 45 miles per hour. Okay, I didn't manage to translate the whole presentation, but anyway, maybe I can stop here, just saying that although this kind of errors are not very likely to appear just randomly. So in these cases, the network was really fooled. So it was a kind of misuse. But the question is this technology really safe? Or, well, it offers a lot of room for misuses. So malicious use is well, looks really very bad. Okay, thank you very much. My time is up.
Thank you, Professor Bratko. Professor Bratko will also be one of the guests of the roundtable discussion that's about to commence. And while we set everything up and I guess clear the computer and everything, allow me to introduce the moderator of the roundtable. This the roundtable will be moderated by Gregor Planteric of Zavod 14. Gregor, please come on stage. And your guests will be, already I said, Professor Bratko of Faculty of Computer and Information Science of University of Ljubljana. Professor, please. Janez Musek from Jože Trontelj Institute of Ethics and Values. Dan Podjet of ZRC SAZU, which is Slovenian Academy of Arts and Sciences. Aljaž Šmrl, whom you've already met. Nina Page of Center for International Relations of Faculty of Social Sciences in Ljubljana. Jonas Valbjørn Andersen of IT University in Copenhagen. And before I remove myself from the picture completely, Paul Kuyer of the Dublin City University. Gregor, the show, as they say, is yours, if you're ready. If not, I can entertain the people or bore them for a few minutes more. Okay. Right, and I will now leave you in Gregor's. Watch the phone. Okay. Okay, cool. Everyone's set. Take the high chair while you're stand.
Actually, I will remove this chair. People cannot
Allow
see.
me. Yes. Standing is good for you. You know, you should do it at least a couple of hours a day.
Table here.
Cool. And make sure that everybody else can see you as well. And
Okay. Well, thank you. It's not me who is important, but our guest here. So we saw now the introduction about what actually artificial intelligence is. So like half of my questions are out. So it's good that we start now with this a little bit demystification of these things so that we know what we are actually speaking about. And I will now start also with some kind of warming questions so that you can get to know also our other guests with other issues which are also going to be like ethical dilemmas, social dilemmas, and also international global issues. And I will start, but of course then somewhere you will be asked kindly if you have any kind of questions so that our guests can answer to them. So please, be prepared and listen well. And I will now start with Dr. Musek, which is our ethical expert. Actually with some question, basic one, which is why it's actually important that when we are developing or researching about artificial intelligence, we also take care that we take into consideration ethical principles.
Okay. Do I need this thing?
I think you
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So, you hear me now? Ethics is important in every aspect of our life. Maybe we are not aware enough of this importance of ethics, but we can very soon recognize it, considering that all major societal, personal, and our professional risks are due to the gap between the ethical principles and ethical behavior on the one side and our real behavior on the other side. Speaking otherwise, our behavior is not very well aligned with our ethics. Concerning the AI, the ethical issues become even more important, because I think that IA is the most powerful tool being developed in the history of human beings, and the ethical the respect of ethical behavior in every aspect connected with the AI is even more important. The benefits of AI are compared with other tools developed by humanity, are augmented, are multiplied, and also the possible damages and harms are augmented and multiplied. That is why the ethical aspect of AI is of such importance.
Thank you. I will then give the word to also, and continue with the ethical questions, to the Mr. Parkour from the Dublin City University. And actually with the question, perhaps, what is ethical AI? What is ethical artificial intelligence? What we can understand under it?
Okay, thank you, Gregor. Well, first of all, let me say, from a philosophical point of view, what's so interesting about why we're so interested in ethical AI is, I think, is that we as humans like to think of ourselves as rational decision makers. We are the masters of the universe. We are the ones that can make technology. We make technology in what we want, and we are the ones that make decisions, important decisions about how we want to live our lives, what we want to do. But now AI is also possible of making decisions, and AI is influencing our decisions. The Netflix recommendation system decides what you watch. The Amazon recommendation system decides what you buy. There are all kinds of other AI systems in the background. For example, traffic systems that decide how you drive, or where you drive, or how fast you drive. So this is why ethical AI is, I think, becoming important, because it challenges us as the decision makers of the universe. Now, when AI is going to make decisions, we have to make sure that these are the proper decisions. Amazon, for example, launched a AI system that was capable of reviewing resumes of software developers to decide who to hire. Who has heard of this example of Amazon? Almost nobody, so that makes it a good story. The AI of Amazon, they checked the resumes. Whenever a candidate would apply, the AI would filter the resume, and it would filter out all women. All women were filtered out immediately on a separate pile, and they would be all rejected. So Amazon looked into this, and they said, how is this even possible? And it turned out that historically, almost all software developers are men, so the AI learned to, on the basis of this data, to hire only men. So what did Amazon do? They scrapped the gender. The gender wasn't on the resumes anymore. What did the algorithm do now? It learned to look for words that males use a lot. So men like to use words like powerful and strong and very, very capable. And the AI started selecting for those words. So I think this is an example that shows that the decisions that AIs make can become very, very unethical, and in a way that we really, really don't want in our society if we don't pay attention. And that is why ethical AI is so important, I think.
Okay, thank you. Now I will represent Dr. Dan Podiet, who will cover today the social issues of artificial intelligence. If I understand, you want to talk a little bit about that question: should we let artificial intelligence to manage our companies, our planets, or the states?
Yes, this was a question that I raised on Tuesday at the Go Digital conference, and I think some of you were there, including Professor Baratko and some people that I see in the audience, and it raised quite some eyebrows when I said, I suggested or proposed that, because the debate was about losing jobs in this industry 4.0 and society 5.0. I don't know what this 5.0 points mean anyway? Where are, by the way, this 3.14 and other versions? So this is maybe a question for later. But I asked the question, so shouldn't, in the brave new world that we are developing, the managers and politicians be most afraid of losing their jobs? Because it would be better to leave this kind of decisions with the data that is available about management of companies, management of countries, management of the world, to artificial intelligence. Because the idea was that in the companies there is 3 to 15% of sociopaths and psychopaths in the top managerial positions. And if we leave the room to something really totally unemotional, such as computer, then we have a perfect manager of the world, of a company, of our country, for example. And I didn't have time to answer then later when the debate started on the stage and explain what is the basis of my thinking. So we live in time now called Anthropocene. And you mentioned that we are masters of the universe. Well, not completely. We are masters of the planet, and we are now a geological force on this planet, terraforming the planet, transforming it, and simultaneously destroying it. And apparently, what the experts predict, there will definitely not be place for 10 billion people on this kind of planet by the end of century anymore. So, James Lovelock, who is the author of the Gaia theory, who warned already in the 1970s, 1980s about the CO2 exhaustions ruining our planet, and he's 100 years old this year. He says it's my last book. It is probably his last book. And he says, the Anthropocene was the shortest geological period. Why? Because you're dying out, people. This is the end. However, you don't have to be sad. Just sit down, relax, enjoy the rough ride to the future. You have created something beautiful meanwhile. It's a new kind of life based on silicon instead of carbon. So the artificial intelligence, which will most probably manage the world much better than you do. And we live in a really transformative time. I do not completely agree with him, and I do not completely support Lovelock. However, I think that life 3.0, as Max Tegmark calls it, the artificial intelligence is on the rise. When? By 2045, as Ray Kurzweil says, I don't know. Or by 2200, I don't know. But sooner or later, this is the future of the planet. And the human species, Homo sapiens, hasn't significantly changed in the past 40,000 years. If there was a person from 40,000 years ago here in the audience, you wouldn't notice the difference. If he would be closed, he would wear this kind of clothes. However, the computers still follow this Moore's law, and the processor power grows exponentially. So where does it lead us? To what kind of future? Definitely the computers will be able to survive even if it's 50 degrees on the planet or minus 10 degrees on the planet. Minus 10 is even better. This is what the computer experts say, like cooling it down a little bit. So we have to ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want? Because I think it's now still time for us to make this kind of decisions.
Thank you. Perhaps I will give then the word to our colleague Jonas Warbion Andersen from the IT University of Copenhagen. Exactly because we are probably not far away from there that we would have some artificial intelligence who is actually intelligent. No, so.
Well, I tend to disagree a little bit on that. So this sort of general intelligence that we need in order to manage a company or run government or whatever, we are actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Professor Bratko, but we're actually quite far from that in technical terms. So what we have is a series of very specific applications of algorithms that are able to perform very narrow tasks at very high speed and at great scale, which is also quite revolutionary, but in a different sense. So in its applications, it does change the way that we are from my home turf on a business school. It does change our business processes. It just changed the way that we organize, just not in the sense that it takes over as the CEO or the chairman of the board anytime soon, but in very sort of specific and pinpointed areas.
Perhaps.
Just a brief comment. So I don't really believe that managers should be computers. It's just a provocation, really. What I'm saying is that we should keep the managers and have politicians who have emotions and run our planet with emotions. This is the point. Not leave it to the emotionless artificial intelligence. So, but it's up to us to decide.
Thank you. And now I will give the word to Ms. Nina Page, our international relations expert. More with some first general question about the global artificial intelligence race. Perhaps where is the European Union now in this sort of speaking, and where is the competition?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a very common one, I would say. But I wanna start answering it with my least favorite quote of Vladimir Putin. Whoever will master artificial intelligence will become the ruler of the world. So this was his quote that was widely cited everywhere. And based on that, I just want to ask a brief question to the audience. And I would like you to maybe clap when I ask the question. And I will mention in the question. I will mention China, United States, Russia, and European Union. Okay. So what do you think? Who will become the leader of the world in artificial intelligence in the next 5 years? Okay, those who think Russia, clap now. European Union. United States. China. You didn't clap.
There's such a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to, I want to touch, I don't know, I selected those kind of big powers just because they're the most widely known or cited in the media, and this is what is the most, the heated debate is around them. And I want to start by addressing why nobody clapped for Russia, which I think, although Vladimir Putin, said that quote, so maybe somebody should clap for Russia. But for example, if we take a look at Russia in artificial intelligence, actually Russia has a lot of, has a high culture in terms of university culture, and AI scientists that derive from Russia are actually quite successful scientists. So they have the knowledge. They also have their own search engines. They have their own social network. They have their own whole ecosystem, AI ecosystem developed that enables them to collect data. And data is what feeds the artificial intelligence, among other things. So Russia actually has, in this way, it has one good predisposition, and it has its own, for example, the fact that it uses their own search engine or social network. This is, or even apps, for messaging, instant messaging, and so on. It has quite a high predisposition to be one of the top forces in AI, although not the leading one. If we take a look at the United States, of course, the United States is a pioneer in the field, and it is a natural consequence, I would say, of the fact that it has the largest net inflows of capital, for example, in the world. It has the a big culture of mergers and acquisitions, has a big venture capital availability. It also has high labor costs, which attracts elite talent also from Europe. Actually, a lot of scientists that pioneered the field derive from Europe, but they worked in the United States their whole life. It also has these soft skills, I mean soft capacities, or how to put it, Silicon Valley mindset and ecosystem, just entrepreneurial ecosystem, for example, and also the working culture, which is quite high-paced. But however, I do think that China recently, it is, if the United States was developing the AI, that China is industrializing it in a way. If we take a look at what are Chinese kind of advantages in the world of the AI, of course it is its massive population. You know, it has 1.4 billion people. 800 million of them are active internet users. And you have to know that most of them are on their mobile phones. So they don't own a computer or a laptop, but they are on their mobile phones. And this, of course, enables a massive advantage in terms of data that is provided to the technology, so to the tool, to the artificial intelligence. Then, if we take a further look at just pure statistics, it has 600 million of of users that use mobile payments. It has 550 million people that actively use online shopping, and it has 200 million of bike sharing users. 200 million of bike sharing users. So that are quite big numbers. And on the other hand, what is what is interesting with China in comparison to the US and even to the EU in this way, and I will cut it, I will stop talking soon, I promise, is the fact that China has a very developed national strategy for the implementation of artificial intelligence, and it's called the New Generation Artificial Intelligence Development Plan. It was made in 2017, and besides the Belt and Road Plan that you for sure know about, and Made in China 2025 that was made in 2015, it's like the main artificial intelligence plan. And what China here has are clear objectives and goals that it wants to reach. By 2030, it wants to become a leading AI superpower in the world. But as opposed to EU strategy, that is now being developed in the, for example, framework of the Council of Europe and on the level of the national states, Germany and so on, also in Slovenia. China has a set of very measurable input and output indicators that the EU does not have. And also national strategies mostly do not have. So national strategies in the European Union are very vague. They are saying, okay, we will do this ethically, we will, it will be trustworthy, and so on. And China also has this. China uses the words like harmonious, harmony, friendliness, friendly to the world, and so on. So it has these similar values incorporated, but inside the plan, it also has several sub-plans that are redefined every 3 years that set clear goals, like European directives, so clear goals on a national level that provinces, municipalities have a freedom, on how to implement these goals. And this creates internal competition inside China among the provinces, among city municipalities on who will contribute more. So if you take a look at Beijing, it's developing a whole new AI research area that's going to be truly expensive. If you take a look at Guangzhou, it's developing a new academy. And so he has these big centers that are competing among each other because they want to reach national targets, because they are so well defined and measurable. And this is what Europe does not have. What we have is high knowledge. So we have a lot of knowledge, but it's escaping us a lot of times to the US because it's paid more there. And we have really good research institutions with long traditions and very well established governmental funding. So, for example, US does not have the National Authority for US Research Funding has around $100 million of a budget on a, so it's a lot, but we also have quite well-developed frameworks. We could have more, but let's say that our advantage is that we have really good institutional supports also. Yeah, so I think there are pros and cons maybe about it later, but hopefully this answers it.
Thank you. So this was, let's say, first warm-up, and now to you, dear guests here, do you have any kind of questions already which you would like to ask our guests? Any hands raised? Not yet? Okay, so let's continue then. Then I will connect to this about how this it's with the competence between these regions around. For example, Europe, what Europe has also good data, if I understood. I will ask this to Dr. Koshmel. Questions about the fair use of data then, because as I understand, European Union has a lot of open data and which everybody can use, but it's also not fairly used then.
So yes, this question has a bit of a background from a couple of days ago when we were discussing this, and we were actually discussing what would be the Europe's advantage in comparison to the US or other geographical areas. And one point that we sort of reached was this Earth observation system that it's now in place through the Copernicus program. For those of you who might not know, Europe has invested a lot of money in a satellite system that does really good imaging that is basically available to, let's say, through some caveats to everyone. But of course with limits to commercial applications and whatnot. So when European scientists are processing this data, a very common way to do this today is to rely on infrastructure that you rent from online giants such as Microsoft and Amazon, which have their servers in the US basically. So a colleague at JSI has told us that what has been recently found out is that when these scientists upload vast amounts of satellite data to their online accounts at Amazon and Microsoft, this data gets apparently stolen and used in commercial applications without any kind of fairness involved. So this raises this is basically a part of a broader problem of modern technology, is that even if you look at, I recently somebody showed me the data of how much from Deutsche Telekom, and it showed the percentage of where their traffic comes from. So the traffic that they serve to their clients in Germany, and 70% of it was from U.S. corporate giants, Amazon, Google, so on and so forth. Now all this data is coming through this system, and we cannot cut off the US internet, so we are exposed to it in this sense. So this is a broader problem than just a problem of AI, but definitely fair data use here suffers a lot, because I guess these companies will always go for short-term profit as opposed to any kind of long-term fair use.
Thank you. Anybody would like to add something? Some questions? No. If you go a little back to the technical issues, more or less, you were addressing, Professor Bratko, the complexity of algorithms, and you explained quite well to us, so that we understand now better. Are we, or how we are capable? Are we humans, or we are capable to follow the complexity and or to control it? Is there some kind of way, or we are just it just goes out of our control on this kind of question?
Okay, is it okay? The question understand is, do we understand and can we ensure control of algorithms or large systems? Especially, do we have any guarantees on their on the correctness of the computation that they produce? And the answer can already be seen in what I said in my presentation before. There are methods that enable transparency, and with such methods we do have hope of being able to predict what will be the result of the computation. But then there are these other methods, they belong to sub-symbolic AI and can be called different names also, when we do not have such guarantees. So I would say yes, sometimes some of these techniques we can control, and with some techniques we virtually we can't. The technical basis for control is, for example, formal proof of correctness of software, which is a very nice mathematically based idea, which allows us that we mathematically, for sure, prove that a certain piece of software is going to produce results always as they are intended. But then that only goes to a certain extent, because when we get to very complicated systems, then these mathematical proofs become too complicated, and that no longer works. On the other hand, with systems like deep neural network learning, which are illustrated, then this doesn't work. And so it is very hard to see how that could work. And the situation is even much worse than that, because what I have been telling now is, I would say, not a very firm guarantee that this technology is not going to be misused. But this is still on the assumption that cybersecurity is okay. But if that assumption is not correct, then everything can go to hell. So unfortunately, okay, you asked a good question, and I can say I can only hope that nothing tremendously bad will happen. I have some colleagues who work in cybersecurity, and I often talk to them. And these colleagues always say, I say, well, can you say that these systems are secure? I mean, the basis for everything is cybersecurity. And almost always they say, no, we cannot guarantee that. So unfortunately, I mean, one big thing to be, I think, to be really strictly regulated, and I would say regulated so that we do have guarantees, possibly at the expense of freedom, what is possible to do with these large systems. So we'll have to, I think, limit what can possibly be done with software systems.
And probably we are now also addressing the question of accountability. You wanted to add something, Paul?
Yeah. Thanks. Professor Brodko, I have a question for you, because you said that to a certain extent we can never have control over AI systems. And you, of course, come from a discipline of computer science, but from a philosophical perspective, I would like to challenge your answer, because I think in a certain sense we can have control over AI. You showed us a picture on the board with data, algorithm, output. And I think if you look in this picture for control, you will not find it. But this is not the complete picture, because before data, there is a human world. Data don't fall from the sky, they are measured in the world. And we do know what the world is, and we do know how those data relate to that. And behind the output is not the endpoint, the output is a prediction. But on the prediction, we need to act. There is a certain decision to be made by a human. For example, in predictive police algorithms, we measure where criminality finds place, then we have the data, Then we have the algorithm. It predicts where crime will take place, and only then a police officer has to decide how the police department will act. The algorithm is not omnipresent. So in that sense, we do have control over how we measure data, where we measure data, and how we will act on the predictions of the system. So in that sense, we certainly do have control over AI, I would say.
Yes. But now I will discuss your latter issue, which has to do with the fact that the computer has produced some recommendation, and then it is up to the court to decide whether to implement that recommendation. Now, so the judge, okay, you are absolutely right. It is still the responsibility of the judge to make the final decision. Now, again, I would like to emphasize the importance of transparency of these systems. Now, suppose that the judge does not understand how the system's recommendation evolved, so it does not understand the logic. Well, then the judge can only do two things. Either simply accept that, or suppose that the recommendation is different from the judge's own judgment. Then if the judge can understand the reasoning process of the AI, then probably this can be sorted out. But if he can't, he or she can't, then he will probably say, in most of the cases, in the majority of the cases, the systems are right, and therefore it is best to just accept the system's decision. So although you are right that it's still it is still human's decision in the end, but in reality it seems it is not, unless we do have transparency. Then things are different. Okay. And I could discuss the input side of it, but anyway.
Maybe just a short comment on this. It reminds me a little bit of the companies of the future, which will have a computer, a dog, and a human. So the computer will run the company, and then you have this control system, the dog and the human. So if something goes wrong, the human will want to press the button, and the dog will be there to bite him to stop immediately because the computer knows better. And regarding the judgment systems, I think I read a couple of months ago that they developed an algorithm which actually decides based on the whole previous cases in the database, what is the right and what is the wrong decision. So you don't need a judge anymore, or any person going through files and other cases and so on. A computer is a much better judge. And plus, it's unemotional, so it's not emotionally biased. And perhaps then you don't need a control system anymore. Again, do not agree, because I much more agree with, for example, Garry Kasparov, who lost against the computer in 1997 in chess against the Deep Blue, and I think he was a little bit disappointed, and since then, that time he has been researching how to beat that computer. And the best combination at this moment is a combination of computer and humans. So they are the ones who make the final decision, and computer is the one doing this brute force thinking, like which are some of the possible combinations. And then innovativeness and tricks are left to the people. So he calls this kind of combination centaur, like half the mythological creature, half horse, half human. And perhaps this is the solution for the future. See, we have to coexist with technologies, because we will be more and more technologized anyway. We have already become extensions of technologies, and not only technologies are extensions of humans.
I think that, or please.
Okay, I just wanted to answer This idea of that the combination of human and computer intelligence is the best. That's what you said, and it's a very nice idea, and it often works. And surely you are right that it came up in this competition between human intelligence at chess, Garry Kasparov on the one side, and deep thought computer on the other side. So if at that time you put those two components, human chess player, the best human chess player and the best computer chess player together, jointly they would be better than any human and any computer. But now the situation has changed completely. This combination is no longer valid. I mean, at least in chess, the human-computer team would be inferior to just single computer.
Yes, but you have computers on both sides. If you know what I mean.
Yes, but if you suppose that you yes, it's okay if you have computers on both sides, but and no humans on end. No. Just computers on both sides is the best for both sides, and the computers at chess have progressed so far that humans will just make a mess. Unfortunately, chess is not really so important, but the more important areas are like medicine. And in medicine, I think your combination, human plus computer intelligence, is still a winning combination. Okay, so good. You are right in that.
For driving or, I don't know, airplane, so I wouldn't rely just on human anymore.
Okay. Yeah, of course. You better don't.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. Yeah. So just first addressing this metaphor of computers on both sides of a chessboard. That's sort of what we have with financial markets these days. Right? So most of the stock exchanges are traded at nanosecond intervals. And actually, just to illustrate, the most expensive real estate in Europe is in this middle of this plowed field in Belgium, because it's right in the center between the London and Frankfurt stock exchanges. So if you can relay the signal quicker by putting a mast there, your algorithm can beat the opposition by a fraction of a second, and so make more money. So in that sense, we already have computers at both sides of that chessboard. And addressing your comment as well, is like we talk a lot when we talk regulation of these algorithms about regulation of algorithms, which is obviously important to know how they function and how they reason. But we tend to neglect to talk about all of the regulation that is done by algorithms. So we have algorithms in the form of smart contracts or in different incentive systems that are automated that actually regulate our behavior in a very direct and very sort of powerful sense. And so I think we need to broaden that up a little bit. I think that also speaks to the Chinese example there, where in Europe we seem to be very focused on regulating the algorithm and the technology, because that is sort of our thinking. We have a tool and we need to regulate how it's built and how it's used. They correct me if I'm wrong, but that's sort of my understanding. Is what comes out of China is more seeing it as a way of regulating human behavior.
Can I? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I completely agree with you, especially on this Europe point. Europe perceives AI for some reason, although the scientists working in Europe here are top-notch and have developed a lot, we perceive it in these discussions as something that is coming from abroad, AI race, right? While China, of course, has been for years copying copying everything because China did not have knowledge. Because of Cultural Revolution and all of the history that happened so in Chinese region till the 80s when China started to open up, 90s. Of course, China did not have the knowledge to create its own AI. I mean, the lead scientists that were Chinese were developing in United States. For sure, some of you read the latest hit Kai-Fu Lee's book, AI Superpowers. And here he makes an excellent point that China went into this kind of development through a very long and thorough path, basically, because they had to first learn how to even innovate. So they have to copy, you had a copy of Facebook, you had a copy of every single app that the West developed, because this is the way that you learn, also in Chinese culture. So if you are learning, I don't know if some of you here is learning Chinese, so what is the process of learning Chinese? You have to repeat every single symbol as many times as possible. For homework, you get 40 times of repeating each symbol because you have to master it before you can write anything. You're learning symbols at the beginning, okay? Hundreds of them. So this is their way of thinking and of mastering. And after this level was achieved, then they started to innovate. And because the competition in China is very, very fierce, this process of innovation was also much more robust. So Kai-Fu Lee here says that it's a very nice example that China is gladiators field. So because there they were not following regulations on copyrights and so on, they would be copying each other and stealing ideas from each other, even went so far that they would, I don't know, file charges against other companies' CEO for something, for prostitution and so on, because they didn't want the company to progress. And the way how Chinese market developed, it was very unregulated, as opposed to the very conservative European development scene, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that Dr. Museki wanted also to say something.
Thank you. I would also, I wish to comment this slogan, artificial intelligence and human on both sides. It seems fine until the control of human over the artificial intelligence is provided. But what if and when the superintelligence emerges, when the artificial intelligence will reach the level when it will be so exceeding the human capacities that it will be capable of self-consciousness, of independence, of human control and so on. This is, I know, this is a rather fantastic perspective today, but you know Kurzweil and other writers which discuss the so-called technical superintelligence and technical singularity, and they put this perspective so in the middle of our century. Now, what will be the most secure way to preserve, to maintain the human control over artificial intelligence? That's, I think, is a very important question.
Any would like to answer? Please.
Just briefly, somebody said that the general artificial intelligence will be the biggest invention of humankind and perhaps the last one.
So we can conclude this evening. Thank you very much.
Well, if to prolong the evening, I might add something. There's this famous parable, this famous story about a village who lives on the side of a forest. And one day a child hears something in the forest, and he tells his mom, and his mom tells the neighbors, and his neighbors tell the other neighbors. And at the end of the day, there's not a sound, but the village is surrounded by wolves, and the village is surely gonna die because the wolves are gonna attack. And this is, I think, general intelligence at the moment. We know that there might be something. We have developed the term AI, but this general AI is so far away that we can't even begin to imagine what it maybe would look like in a very distant future. So talking about it and theorizing about it is nothing else than talking about the wolves in the forest that we have never seen and don't even know if they are truly there. So I think this is a question we should not focus on, and instead we should focus on the questions that are actually here now. The Amazon example, but there are numerous examples in medical biology. There are a lot of ethical examples how we should treat this, how we want pilots or drivers of self-driving cars, how we want to distribute responsibility when they are crashed. Those are questions that are actually relevant now, instead of the fictional questions of the future.
This discussion, because I am older and I will not face this possibility.
Soobstoj is your age, actually.
Oh, yes,
He lives very healthy life, just on purpose to live by 2045, so he could be uploaded to the Matrix. And he eats per year for $1 million pills, food supplements, and he also has a company which sells these food supplements. So
this lifestyle is financed by the books he sells about superintelligence. So perhaps a small caveat there.
Perhaps any questions ready from the public? Please.
Yes, so regulation of artificial intelligence was mentioned several times, and I wondered how you see regulating artificial intelligence as a rational process or emotional in a way, because these emotions are kind of, I don't know, black box sub-symbol kind of human reasoning or something. And if it is rational process, so that we could rationally define our goals in our society and so on, then we could use artificial intelligence to find the best regulation of artificial intelligence, in a way, for instance. And if this is emotional process, I would just mention, because it was mentioned like emotionless artificial intelligence. Nowadays you have many systems being able to recognize human emotions and so on. And some people see machine learning techniques and artificial intelligence as an invention of a kind of microscope, of telescope, that will provide us with some insight into some structures that we are unable to comprehend directly, that maybe we will get explainable emotions, like explainable artificial intelligence to get some kind of explainable human emotions. What drives us, to make decisions and maybe to simulate that model.
I think we perverted a little bit these emotions, and we attribute only the Homo sapiens for having emotions. Today a law was accepted, it's horrible, in Slovenia, that animals are emotionless creatures, and so therefore what is follows, so let's slaughter them. Because we humans have the emotions, the animals don't, approximately like that. And the computers, again, unemotionless beings. So I don't know if we should put so much emphasis on emotions. However, I believe the question of the intelligence is the problem. Is there really just one kind of intelligence of human beings? So what is actually intelligence of a human being? And why do we make this distinction between artificial intelligence and human intelligence? Isn't a human something qualitatively different than a computer? That is a completely different creature. Otherwise, if the exponential growth continues of the artificial intelligence, sooner or later computers will be more intelligent than humans and more perhaps emotional than humans and better in every kind. So they will become actually Übermensch, superhumans, and we will be lesser species for them, as we treat animals currently in Slovenia.
To complement this answer with a, and I do not mean this in a bad way, in a more practical aspect, a lot of the artificial intelligence algorithms used today are, in a way, very basic tools. They are built for a task. They do that task, perhaps with superhuman efficiency, but they do that task. Be it driving a car or predicting the stock market, or not really predicting, rather trading at a stock market, telling us if there's a cat on an image or not, or identifying faces. Now, these systems are, in a way, a lot simpler than anything that would have general intelligence, emotion, anything like that, but still have important implications on everyday life. And I think with these, talking about regulation, we definitely need to start with these that are operating now today, because I firmly believe that everyone in this room uses artificial intelligence daily, even if they may not understand it or realize it. The recommendation system on Netflix or on YouTube, or the recommendations on Amazon, the GPS that drives you here, and so on and so forth. These are all powered by these technologies, and if not managed properly, they can have very adverse effects. Like there's numerous hot topic examples of this, such as the targeting issue with Cambridge Analytica that influenced Brexit and so on. These are topics that I believe are very well within our frame of understanding at the, not perhaps at the model level, but at the impact level that they have. And if we want to push these towards a more regulated form, then I believe we can. I believe we have the tools, and there also already exists like efforts to do this. I'm glad to say that Slovenian experts are actually involved in several such fields, with OECD, Council of Europe, UNESCO, so on. So these, like us, Slovenian experts concretely are involved in all three of these organizations on the forefront of building these the principles that might someday regulate this. This is not to say that these are easy questions that will be solved in a fortnight, but I believe there's plenty of achievable work on how AI affects us today. Okay, of course, in parallel, we need to keep our eye on the horizon, but these first steps, I believe, are manageable, and we're already working on that.
Perhaps.
Okay, I want to say a few, one or two comments about the previous remark about emotions. Like, in my understanding, computer recognition of emotions, that should be done very carefully, and I think that should be really regulated. And people who are developing these techniques for computers to recognize or detect emotions from people, even in cases when people want to suppress emotions, like hide emotions, that I think is, to me, that's unacceptable. I think one of the human rights is that you have the right to hide your emotions, and then trying to detect these hidden emotions by computer. That should not be allowed. So that is one part of the regulation which I think is necessary and is also very concrete and in my mind I don't have any doubts about that. There was another comment about, okay, several people mentioned what will happen when we get to the point of technological singularity, which is defined as the point when artificial intelligence will become better than human intelligence. But then there are many people who are making predictions about that. And Kurzweil says, okay, 2045 this is when he expects this will happen. But then there are at least 20 other people prophets who made different predictions. The only thing in which they agreed is that something like that is going to happen. But all that is very speculative and it's very badly defined. And it does not take into account the fact that artificial intelligence is very different from human intelligence. And somebody, I think you did point out at these differences. And I can tell you what one of the obvious differences is. That is the ability of reasoning by using common sense. So common sense, very simple, very natural, very easy to use by humans, and very hard for computers. In my presentation, I had a few more slides about that. There is a challenge which is called the Winograd challenge, which has been, that's a challenge for deep neural network learning. And it consists of exercises or problems that involve the knowledge of the use of common sense. Now, deep neural network learning, it works miraculously good at at language translation. But as soon as you have to make some common sense reasoning in that translation, then they will not be able to do that. Okay, that's my comment. So we should, in my view, we should not be so much preoccupied by the consequences of this singularity point when it happens, if it happens.
Dr. Musek?
Only an idea. The common sense. I think that in this case, it would be possible to construct Turing tests on the questions focused on common sense.
Sorry, microphone.
It will be possible to construct a Turing test on the basis of the questions which are measuring common sense thinking of a human being, and maybe for some time artificial intelligence will not be able to beat the machine. Yeah.
It has been done, and you're right, artificial intelligence was not able to beat humans.
On the other side, I think in 2015, I don't remember the author, but there was an experiment on Turing test where the artificial intelligence fooled the majority of the testes.
Turing test gave positive result only in controlled areas. So it was like you can say if we are talking about playing chess, for example, then the Turing test would succeed. Okay.
May I just comment on this? So perhaps we need another kind of test, and the one that was presented in Blade Runner, the movie, which by the way happens today, the movie. So in November 2019 on this day it's going on, and there was the void-conf test if you saw the film, and we might need this kind of test to identify not the Turing test, which is about the intelligence, but the test of emotions, whether the person on the other side is actually an artificial intelligence or the human intelligence.
Yeah. If I may just quickly comment.
Yes.
We actually did an experiment on just this that showed that, so we basically tested for how people trust in algorithms. And specifically it was in the area of these chatbots when you log on to some web store of sometimes these windows will pop up and there will be this person or algorithm that you can chat with. And what we found was that people tend to trust. We had two parameter spaces. One was the affective trust, so the emotional capabilities of the algorithm of basically emulating a human, and then there was the cognitive, like do they make the correct recommendations? And it seemed like people had a tendency to trust the algorithms with high affective capability, i.e. that looked like they had emotional responses, even though their cognitive performance was lower than an algorithm without it. Yeah. So these things are already being sort of built in at a very sort of low level, and maybe a bit clunky implementation. But I think we need to think about. It definitely raises the question of how do we interface and interact with our algorithmic counterparts, and to which extent do we bring these effective properties into it.
I mean, I love chatbots. By the way, about Amazon, I keep talking with these chatbots and I thank them and I communicate with them. Somehow, I just feel better, more humane, if I say thank you to the bot.
And they know you trust them for it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would just like to return a bit to Professor Bratko's common sense, and just with a short, maybe illustrative example of what AI definitely cannot do, in at least from what I've tested it as a user. It's so just a short example. So together with a data scientist from Ukraine, we created artificially intelligent, basically, well, we created inspirational quotes. Inspirational quotes are a very particular thing in human society because they mark a special moment in history when somebody said something special that in this context, in this very context, it had an inspirational or motivational kind of purpose. And produced with artificial intelligence, I had to tell you, they don't make any sense. They don't make any sense at all, and they are not inspirational. They don't even make sense as a phrase. And we tested 15 of them, so we did 15 slides, 15 inspirational quotes, and all of them were so ridiculous that the conference room was only laughing and was not listening to us at all when we were talking about science of inspirational quotes. So common sense. Yeah.
But humans are the same. I mean, human intelligence is the same. Like quotes like "služba je služba, družba pa družba." I never got it, and then we tend to say it, and just okay. So what? I mean, and human-made inspirational quotes. It depends how you say it. It's more important how you say it than what you say it, and this is the element of the human intelligence which is really difficult to copy. Perhaps if you had a really good voice and facial interpretation device, then these quotes would sound much better.
Maybe, are you showing some inspiration quotes?
Yes.
Right now, can you read one out, please? Sure. Because they're generated every so often. There are now tools to do it by yourself.
There's an online page, inspirobot.me, that does exactly this. If you Google generation of quotes, inspirational quotes, it's usually the first hit. The first one that it generated for me was, "Drugstore is to many people synonymous with where dreams come true."
Okay, thank you. Any questions again? We have here, a moment.
If I can just come back to this regulation questions and issues, Professor Bratko will confirm that AI methods have been already used to try to improve traffic regulation, for instance. If you clearly define your goals, you know, like in relation to traffic, more or less, it's rather clear, you know, what is you would like to achieve with improving the regulation. And I believe, as I said, we could do the same with regulating artificial intelligence. You know, the result would be something like kind of not GDPR or something, you know, there's not infinite number of some articles, you know, that people need to follow, or when developers of technologies and so on. And to actually, like, then when we clearly define our goals, aims and so on, what we would like to protect, to achieve and so on, then even potentially to use artificial intelligence to invent the best regulation for artificial intelligence.
So I'm not aware of this work in road safety, but I can imagine what probably one of the first recommendations would be. So if you decide that the key performance indicator here is the number of road accidents, then the first solution that would be proposed would probably be to outlaw all road traffic, because that will guarantee zero accidents. That is to say, yeah, I understand. Yes, so this is where we get into the topic of that you need to specify the parameter space for these algorithms or methods. You need to clearly specify what you're optimizing, and this is a super important issue, and it deals a lot with what we are facing today. An example that's currently making the rounds is how the current recommendation system of YouTube is optimized so that it optimizes time on device, the same as, by the way, Las Vegas slot machines. So its key performance is how long does it keep a user on the page. So it's supposed to give you that next video that is so irresistible that even though you need to work, sleep, talk to your children, you still click that next button. Now, from a business point of view, this is obviously what YouTube wants, because with the next video they can show you an ad and sell that ad to someone. Now, what the algorithm has learned over time is that there are certain cliques of videos that are very good at keeping people interested, and one of the topics is conspiracy theories. Flat Earth, Hollow Earth, lizard people on the moon, whatever. So the system is now actively promoting such videos, and independent researchers have made tests of these, how easy it is to get into a loop of these topics and so on, whatever topic you may start with. So yes, so there are these. But this I want to point out that there are even such emergent properties of such algorithms that we need to take into account, because, okay, I guess you can't completely be mad at YouTube for them wanting to follow their business logic, but the consequence for the broader society is, of course, something that we may not want to have, which is like this amplification of conspiracy theories. So, and this is another topic that is, I feel, the first one that needs a lot of attention in the context of regulation. Here being that this power of amplification that these platforms have, including YouTube, Facebook, or Google, whatnot, have this incredible power to amplify certain aspects of certain topics. And of course, these companies try to shake this responsibility off. What they really do not want is to be responsible for any kind of editorial work. But I think what the current trend is that most likely governmental institutions will, I think, recognize that this amplification power is too intense to be left unregulated by its very nature, basically.
Please,
Hopefully.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, yeah. So I very much agree with this, that there are some unintended sort of emergent outcomes of algorithms when they're on the loose. But I think if you look at the debate now on regulation, you're sort of trying to regulate the actual dimensions of each cog in the engine room rather than set a speed limit, right? So I think if we talk in terms of regulating AI and algorithms, we need to consider why do we want to regulate on this specific parameter. And so this whole debate around transparency is sort of maybe analogous to opening up the bonnet and looking into the engine and seeing how it occurs, but rather than taking care and regulating on each area of application the outcomes, such as promoting conspiracy theories or fake news or whatever it is. And so I think also you need to be very careful with too detailed regulation on the specific mechanics of how these AI systems are put together, and maybe look at the broader picture and the emergent outcomes, I should say.
Correct, I agree. So a lot of this comes back to what Paul said before. So these systems are not in a vacuum. They do not, for the most part, they are not autonomous in a sense that they perform wild, broad actions in whatever space. They have an input, they have an output, and they usually have somebody giving it tasks, right? So this Cambridge Analytica case with Facebook and this micro-targeting and whatnot is to me an interesting case, because while this targeting system is scary in a way, through its ability to identify the individuals in the society that are susceptible to certain manipulations. I feel that two things are important. First one is that I believe the UK may already have laws regarding its political propaganda that were made for the time when people would pay other people to stand on boxes on street corners and scream manipulative propaganda to people. So in a way, this is a repetition of an old problem that has already been legislated. It just hasn't been caught due to transparency issues with Facebook. The other point is, and it's one that is, it angers me a lot, is that, okay, we are attacking these algorithms who have enabled this. Fine, we need to take this into account. But I feel that there's very little public outrage at the nature of the lies that were told. We seem to have accepted, as a society seem to have accepted that a certain level of lying in marketing is acceptable. People can say whatever on mass media, on like, even if it's not targeted. Like outright lies, showing people, like putting people in commercials and say this is a doctor of medicine and they use this product, even if it's just a toilet cleaner, whatever. But this is an outright lie. The person is an actor. They have no authority showing this, whatever. But we've just accepted this. And okay, these tools make it super powerful. Sure, let's look into that, let's regulate, let's be strict. But let's, as I said, let's think of the broader picture. What are the societal implications? What already adverse sides of like currents in our society were just amplified by this? Because I want to go after the marketing guy who wrote that Turkey will send 35 million people to the UK. Everybody knew this was a lie. So why not that?
Mr. Pouliot?
Yeah, so thank you for this comment. It's really important. I'm just reading now a book titled Mindfuck by Christopher Wiley, who is the whistleblower of Cambridge Analytica, one of the most horrible books that I've read lately, and I read 1984 2 weeks before, but this is a really horrible book because we are all brainwashed, and this is why I'm saying that a new political system is on the rise, and this is why I think computers should perhaps take over, and the political system is called idiocracy. So we live in idiocracy, and we vote for politicians who brainwash us, who pay to companies for us to be brainwashed. And how are we brainwashed? By quizzes that we solve, and then they collect data from the voters. 60 million voters were targeted in the US, and their psychological profiles were defined, according to Christopher Wiley, an expert on this topic, and algorithms didn't have much work to do. They targeted people by their psychological traits. And the only thing that I'm happy about this crazy story that put Donald Trump as the president of the world, I'm saying the world, and that managed to take the United Kingdom out of European Union, the only good thing is that people from Veles, city in Macedonia, got paid from I don't know who to fabricate this fake news, false stories, and put them day by day on the internet. And then I don't know why I was targeted. These algorithms might be a little bit insane too, and got images of Hillary Clinton, how she has syphilis, because then they enlarged her mouth and saw some wounds on her tongue, and this is like a sign of syphilis. Plus, she has Parkinson's disease because she walks really weirdly lately, and this is your future president. No, vote for Donald Trump, and things like that. And we buy these things. This is crazy. We buy these things. We vote for people because we get information like this. And this is something, this is the end of democracy as we know it. Because we cannot make rational decisions anymore. And the democracy, the liberal democracy, should be based on rational decisions. This is idiocracy that we live in. And this is the high time to say no to this kind of actions and events, and to prevent algorithms to target us in any kind of way, to buy things, to vote for people, and so on. So what shall we do?
Perhaps we should address at this level briefly the unintentional biases of the artificial intelligence, perhaps because it's perhaps a little bit more, perhaps to you, Dr. Bratko or Dr. Koshmel, the bias in the artificial intelligence, now when it's unintentionally.
Well, maybe just. Can you start?
Thank you, Dr. Musek. Yes.
Okay, I somehow I understood your story as that you now realized that we are all manipulated in a way that means the end of democracy. And to me, this happened 6 years ago at a dinner with two of my AI colleagues. So that was 2013 when we realized that AI can mean, these uses of AI can mean the end of democracy. And at that time, actually, one of these colleagues, Stuart Russell, said to me, "You should write a book about this." And then 3 years later, actually, there was a book out with the title "End of Democracy." So I looked at it. Okay, that's my title. Only the author's name was not mine. So it was Yvonne Hofstetter. But anyway, yes. You see, some of us were thinking about that, talking about that for 6 years, and we have not got to stopping this. But if regulation has to do something, then this is one of the most urgent things.
And then you are complaining about China. They don't have that problem with democracy and voting. Yeah, maybe just on that note, they do have other issues, for example. So, there are, I guess, two sorts of regulation that we are talking about, or unregulated environments. So we allow for propaganda to be everywhere. If this is, I understood that from your words, basically. However, with the Chinese, maybe this is a more targeted one, but still unregulated in this way. So I guess the problem is in this part of the world, the problem is the alignment of governance and market. Of course, this is a common problem. But yeah, just wanted to add that China joke, actually.
So if I add a different perspective, perhaps. So I talk a lot with colleagues from news, journalists, and so on, and a lot of them, especially the more cynical ones, claim that nothing is unbiased. News, humans, like everything, there's nothing is unbiased. There is only context. So the most that you can do in a fight against any kind of bias, this is what some of them claim, is that you provide context or an understanding. And obviously, the idea of transparency that Ivan was discussing before is one key aspect of how we could go towards this. And to maybe give a bit of a more positive look on all this. Even though we a lot of the algorithms used today, especially the cutting edge stuff with deep neural networks and so on, is very complex. In the end, what it does conceptually is it draws lines between groups of points. This is one of the reasons why it can't do common sense, by the way. For example, Professor Judea Pearl, the legendary statistician, recently wrote a book about this, where one of the claims was basically that what AI does, the current effects do not show that AI conceptually the AI as a methodology is so insanely in a way innovative. What it showed is that it's amazing how many problems you can solve by drawing lines between groups of points. And this is in a lot of systems that are powered by some of these technologies are basically run on what can be understood using on a conceptual level, can be understood using high school mathematics. And we have explained these algorithms to children from high school, and they have understood them well enough to use them to solve problems such as image recognition, so on and so forth. So children can understand and use these algorithms proficiently, or at least at some reasonable level of proficiency. And I believe part of the answer to all of this is actually adapting. I know there is a ton of stuff we all need to adapt to and learn today, but at least our children I think we'll need to adapt and learn how these algorithms can process their data. And I think this understanding gives you a level of resilience to some of these algorithms. And society will adapt to some extent. We've adapted to a lot of things, spam emails, lying mass media, whatever. We have adapted to some extent, and we will so to artificial intelligence being used in everyday life, as we already have. And I think a lot of these problems can be alleviated through educating people, especially the young, to take care of and to look for these adverse effects of this technology. Deep fakes now are very hot. These are just methods where they use deep neural networks to fake a video, where you can fake basically anyone saying anything as long as you have enough information and a strong enough computer. And this is unfortunately, this does mean that you cannot trust video anymore. If you see a video of somebody, if somebody shows you on the internet a video of somebody saying nasty things or whatever, you cannot at face value trust that video anymore. This is a fact. But this has been a fact for photographs for a long time, through Photoshop and other manipulations, and we've gotten used to this as well as we could. So it will not end anything overnight, but we do need to stay vigilant and work on this as it evolves.
Thank you. I think our time is actually up, or almost up. Perhaps, Dr. Kuzmir, just a word or two about the International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence, which is being now formed or not confirmed.
Yes. So, as I mentioned briefly before, Slovenian experts are part of a lot of efforts on this front of regulating and managing AI. Now, one of these is actually, so my colleagues at Joseph Stefan Institute have been working hard for years now in cooperation with UNESCO. And they've built, even before I've joined, they've built this, for example, they built this platform of video lectures, which is basically a scientific YouTube and so on. And through this, they have built this close ties with UNESCO, and now have actually managed to propose an establishment of the first UNESCO International Research Center for AI, which is being confirmed these days in Paris. Marco, who was supposed to be here instead of me, who I'm replacing, is actually in Paris right now at UNESCO discussing this. So yes, and it appears this is going well, and this, if finally confirmed, and I can only say wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like it looks well. Then this institute will be established at JSI, at the current CT3 department, and it has a number of focus areas, all of them pretty much aligned with a lot of the values that we've actually been discussing today. How these tools should be used and developed and used in such a way as to benefit mankind and humanity, to promote transparency, to improve education. So the full text actually is AI for education and education for AI. So both aspects, both educating people about AI as well as using AI to improve education, and several others. So this center will be is supposed to be the first one of its kind, and is supposed to be a model that will be followed around the globe. To one of the first points, I think, first action plans for the first I think year or first 2 years is an establishment of a second such center in Africa, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all your guests here, and thank you also for your questions. So our time is up, and I will give the word to Aliash.
Nobody move. Because while the, of course, because there are questions, Gregor, there are questions, and while the Facebook Live
Will artificial intelligence be more responsible than we are? Will they not turn out of itself if we don't do this to people?
Kaartjes hebben met najleefd Billy. Boodschap Sajo Pishkology, Gouda Salatai Družbe. What's with these smooth cars? Because they should take the hedges before that they are into the tree.
Să videa robota, chi bleze bazet. Din lasti sei na robosin jinga badlet.
Umetno, inteligenco, humani, kurz Mozart-Jugmi. Will begin with artificial intelligence human than we are people.
Legalizu clientelans modobili novo premuța postavite volderski lui. Sedaj mi se nalestegne bove treba, da sami jam lui na odu.
Ja, ja. Veš kaj je? Avtomatik, ne? Tu. So?
Ja. Se nikamo ni malo, ha? Pa se mi oboje, lahko, da še pa jaz sem odločil, kjer mi je boljši. Ili na ona, pa tudi res je tniška snega. To je total, pa čist v vklopi genija do konca. 6, to je to. Nič kaj drugo narediti. Na onega idi, ker še boljši ima, veš.
Bodo superintelligentni rachognalne kibojzy kotmi? Was you be super intelligent better than we?
KGS temem mednarodna automobili. Bojdobov zajo pashkaji, gauda salatai drevo. What's with these smooth cars? Because they should take the hedges before that they are into the tree.
Sadnir servidera robota, chi plese ballet. Dillasti sena robot sinjinga ballet.
Bomozet umetno inteligenco humani, kotsmozet liutmi. Will we be with artificial intelligence human than we are people?
Vugli realizu kierdelam smodobili novo premoca postavite voderski lui. Sedaj mi se nalestegne bove treba, da samiliam lunaodu. When you work, we rejecting new equipment for installation of screen leakage. I never need to replace the stage light now.
Es catchnim algorithmen mila go opish metan program, kis birimaji bedak. With an algorithm, can a smart program collect my data?
Anisov CT Vizakov Delavski Rakunal Niki Turia Groman Honestnazivolik Okocha? Are not all these high-tech computers also a huge environment?
Bila quiz della robota, chi plese ballet. Bila quiz della idudiz d'amica, chi pozdravi bu e sebolezvi. If you can make a robot access a ballet, you can also produce a healthcare that clears all diseases.
Chaos and Vic Videla video calls Mijis Della Resnich Bolchis Varna Spechi. Majaman Marv Sake Dan Goveries at Nukin Joe, Kizivivi Montrealu. When I first seen video call, I was really the best thing in the world. My mother is talking with a granddaughter that lives in Montreal every day.
Sauen kekesiko uporam kama aplikasijo. Ese caterona Vicena y La Pansco. Hola, mi nombre es Iva. Forte languagelear ni nius ean aplicación toma que espanisin. Hola, nombre es Libre.
Bo umetno inteligenca posnella draft may. Will artificial intelligence know state borders?
Will the robots be swobodny? Will the robots be free?
Bo umetno inteligenca potreba leposaidk. Ali porto to sublimashine, ki della herd gologiani gas nemo. Will the artificial intelligence need to rest? But will these super machines work? Until they show off?
Yes, no. Show no.
Se superpamen mira ekonomi lashkona osidiobite. Kan a super smart computer belove toglove.
Kaksen algoritmima algubecen, kaksen algoritmima espostobanje, bat algoritmi ese lobe, bat algoritmi ese respect. Ugasniemo, turn off.
BOMOINELIGUMBZASREONVESELJ. Will we have buttons for happiness and happiness?
BOMETNINTELIGENCAVOLJODGOVORNA condensimomi. BOSNHLUGSNITISMICB. STGNBOMOSTORILILJUDJ. Will artificial intelligence be more responsible than we are? Will they know to turn out of itself if we don't do this to people?